In 1690, when Britain was in full-on colonize everything mode, their ships were sailing all over the world grabbing land wherever they could. One day, they stumbled across a tiny island in the South Atlantic. Without asking anyone whether it already had an owner, the British just planted a sign saying, "This is ours now," named it the Falkland Islands, and sailed away. Because of that, Argentina, right next door, always thought the island was unclaimed. When Argentina broke free from Spanish rule in 1810, they naturally included the island as part of their own territory. But in 1833, Britain suddenly remembered the place existed, sent some settlers there, and claimed it as theirs again. Argentina, of course, was furious. The place is 7,000 miles away from Britain. How could they seriously claim that's their territory? But the British didn't care. Their logic was simple. We found it first, so it's ours. And what could Argentina do? Go to war with the British Empire over a little rock in the ocean? No way. So for years, Argentina just shouted that the island should be theirs. They even gave them their own name, the Malvinas Islands. But no one paid much attention. After World War II, Britain started giving up many of its colonies under international pressure. Argentina took the chance to demand the return of the islands. But Britain refused, saying that the islanders were mostly of British descent. That drove Argentina crazy. They went to the US for support, hoping America could pressure Britain. The US offered two ideas. One, that Britain could lease the islands instead of owning them outright. Or two, hand them back to Argentina and relocate the British settlers to New Zealand. But Britain wouldn't budge. Even though the island had only about 40 British soldiers, one old helicopter, and a small patrol boat, they still didn't believe Argentina would ever dare attack. Meanwhile, Argentina thought the same thing, that Britain wouldn't fight a war over such a tiny, useless island. So while both sides were still negotiating, Argentine soldiers quietly went to the island and raised their flag, just to test the waters. When the 22 British soldiers stationed there saw it, they jumped into their little patrol boat to confront the Argentines. The Argentines panicked, put their flag back down immediately, and honestly, the Brits were just as nervous, because they were so far from home and totally outnumbered. Argentina wanted to take the island, but didn't quite have the guts. After all, Britain was still Britain, not someone you pick a fight with lightly. Thing is, the island itself was pretty much worthless. Fewer than 3,000 people lived there. Almost everything had to be imported, and Britain was losing money every year keeping it. But the British refused to let go, not because of the island's value, but because of pride. That pride gave Argentina a headache. For decades, they schemed to get it back. Finally, in 1982, with support from the US and a few Latin American neighbors, and seeing that the new British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, looked soft, Argentina thought it was finally time to take action. On April 2nd, they decided to go for it. The British governor on the island, Rex Hunt, got word that Argentina was planning an invasion. Coincidentally, that day was also a troop rotation day, so the island had a grand total of 85 British soldiers. Rex vowed to fight to the end, until he saw 600 Argentine troops, including special forces, charging in. Then he immediately surrendered. Argentina treated him well and sent him back to Britain the next day. Once he got home, he complained to Thatcher about being bullied. That made her furious. Within 3 days, she called an emergency meeting. They were going to take the island back. Meanwhile, Argentina was celebrating their victory. But the US suddenly turned around and scolded them. What the hell were you thinking attacking British territory? Argentina figured Britain wouldn't really cross 7,000 miles of ocean just for revenge. But America knew better. This wasn't about land anymore. It was about face. Britain might have been struggling, but it was still a permanent member of the UN Security Council, one of the big five powers. If some small South American country could just grab their land, how could they ever hold their head high again? And sure enough, just 4 days later, Thatcher sent a massive fleet, over 100 ships, including 2 aircraft carriers, across the ocean to take back the islands. Argentina was stunned. They never thought Britain would actually come all that way. But at that point, there was no backing down. The Navy went out to fight and immediately lost the heavy cruiser, killing 300 sailors. The rest of their fleet panicked and pulled back. Then the Air Force took over, thinking they could win by sinking a few British ships. Ironically, many of their bombs and torpedoes were bought from Britain years earlier, so they were literally bombing British ships with British weapons. The British were furious. They launched their Harrier jets to fight back. The Argentines were flying old Mirage fighters bought second-hand from Israel, completely outclassed by the Harriers. Still, Argentina had a clever plan. Send one squadron north to lure the Harriers away, and another south to sneak attack the fleet. It actually worked. They managed to sink another British destroyer. That loss pushed Britain over the edge. If they didn't land and take the island back now, they'd lose all credibility. While the air and naval battles were raging, British troops began landing on the islands. Argentina had already stationed thousands of troops there, preparing to fight to the end. Both sides were thinking the same thing. We've come this far, we can't back down now. The ground battles soon broke out. Argentina focused too much on the sea and didn't notice the British landing from the rear. The British stormed straight toward the island's airfield, where a fierce battle broke out. The two sides fought all day, and the British couldn't push through. But they realized something. Most of the Argentine soldiers were young, poorly trained conscripts. So the British used loudspeakers all night, mixing threats and persuasion, until the exhausted Argentine soldiers gave up the next morning. Once the airfield was captured, the last stronghold was Stanley, the island's capital. The British surrounded it quickly. The Argentine commander, Menendez, wanted to turn Stanley into a mini Stalingrad and fight street by street. But his soldiers weren't having it. They basically said, "Sir, this isn't Stalingrad. Let's just surrender and go home." So Menendez agreed, but only on one condition. The surrender document couldn't say unconditional surrender, because that would hurt Argentina's pride. The British didn't care about the wording. They just wanted the war over. After 74 days, the Falklands War officially ended. Over 10,000 Argentine soldiers were captured and sent home. Back in Argentina, those returning soldiers were treated terribly. People saw them as losers. But really, you couldn't blame them. The British troops were elite professionals, while most Argentines were undertrained conscripts. Britain might have won, but it wasn't cheap. The war cost them nearly £3 billion, and they've had to spend another £80 million every year since then to maintain military bases on the islands. Still, for Thatcher, it was worth it. Retaking the Falklands made her wildly popular and helped her win re-election. But as she soon found out, holding on to that tiny island meant much bigger challenges ahead. Because next time, the opponent fighting over sovereignty wouldn't be as easy to handle as Argentina.